Let's go! LSU, Alabama. Could there be a world where these two teams do not play each other every season? You're going to be shocked because it is a very real possibility that actually happens. And a lot of you have been very disgruntled about this. I've opened this up on our live stream last night and in our community page, and my DMs and everything are still blowing up over this topic. That won't actually be decided or changed until a few years from now. So let's all catch each other up and be on the same page before I share you the actual truth about LSU and Alabama and if it would actually be a good thing if they didn't play each other every year. So right now the SEC, of course, has a 14-team league. That is going to change when Texas and Oklahoma join in the summer of 2025. And also the way the SEC is set up now is the absolute worst schedule format in all of American sports, right? Because you have a 14-team conference where you barely play all the other teams in your conference. Now the SEC Football League plays an 8-game conference schedule where you play the other 6 teams in your division. So for LSU, that is Alabama, Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. And you also play a permanent cross-division rival, which for LSU is Florida. Now, of course, a lot of you already know that, but the major issue with that is you only play every other team in your division once every 6 years, unless, of course, you reach the SEC championship game. And even then, that could potentially be a rematch of a team you've already played that year. So this year, LSU's rotation is Tennessee coming to Tiger Stadium. Last year, it was Kentucky. So if all things remain the same, Tennessee wouldn't be coming to Tiger Stadium for once in another 12 years, if that makes sense. And remember, the last time Tennessee came to Tiger Stadium was all the way back in 2010, and they haven't returned, of course, since then. So that kind of sucks. I don't like that, and you shouldn't either. The conference format is horrible right now. So that's why I think Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC is a really good thing, because it fixes to me what is a major problem, which is a severely unbalanced and unfair schedule. So what is the best way to actually decide an SEC schedule? Let's talk about it, and let's see if Alabama is actually a permanent part of that. So now with Texas and Oklahoma joining, let's discuss if the SEC will remain in an 8-game or move to a 9-game conference schedule. Now, once again, more than likely it's not going to change that you play 12 regular season games every year. And we've already discussed what the 8-game conference schedule looks like. With Texas and Oklahoma joining, Ross Dellinger said if the schedule were to remain at 8 games, guess what? The schedule format would actually flip from where it is now. You would only have one permanent team that you play every year and a rotation of 7 other teams that you would play, and that would be divvied up in very different ways. I don't want to get into the hypotheticals of that, but the bottom line is if the SEC remains in an 8-game conference format, they would likely go to the 1-7 format. And if the SEC goes to a 1 permanent team format, you can for sure say LSU and Alabama would not play each other every single year. Now, how do we know that? Well, if we're being honest, the SEC is about tradition, and they want to keep as many traditional rivalries there. So if you play one permanent team, Alabama's permanent team would not be LSU. It would be Auburn, because if we got rid of the Iron Bowl being played every year, there would be mutiny. So a 1+7 format would assure that LSU and Alabama no longer play each and every season. And who would LSU's team more than likely be in that 1+7 format? My best guess would actually be Texas A&M because, well, I could get into a lot of different reasons why. Ole Miss, of course, would have Mississippi State. Georgia would likely have Florida, and so on and so on. So that's the thing. Now, that is a 1+7 format. Do I think that the 8-game conference schedule is going to remain the same? if Texas and Oklahoma join, which they are? And the answer to that is a resounding no. Number one, I don't want it to say the same. A 9-game conference schedule is a lot better than an 8-game conference schedule. I can explain in a lot of different ways why that's the case. But as always, you have to follow the money in college football. And as many of you know, the CBS deal is gone. And you're watching CBS footage here. In a few years, it will move over to ABC. This isn't a television contract channel, but if you are paying more money than what CBS is, and ESPN will be paying a lot more money, then they're going to want better games, and a 9-game conference schedule would guarantee better games. So I think that's really good for the sport, because what you're looking at right now is what Week 12. Now, once again, this is later, a November week of college football looked like, and as you can see, there were a lot of cupcake games on the schedule. We don't want November to be filled with cupcake games. Boom! I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Okay, so let's just say the SEC does go to a 9-game conference format. Well, according to Ross Dellinger and just honestly common sense, we've been talking about this for a while on the channel, a 3-by-6 schedule format is going to be the most likely in-game here. And will Alabama be one of LSU's permanent 3 teams? I don't think so. What I believe it's going to look like is A&M, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State as the 3 permanents. And there's a lot of different reasons as to why I'm more so focusing on Alabama. But even if that is the case, you would be playing Alabama every other year anyway, with the way the schedules would work itself out. So, for those that say, in order to be the best, you got to beat the best, and that has been a response I've gotten a lot of. Well, to be honest, if Alabama is truly the best, you're going to play them in the SEC championship game, or you would face them in the playoff. Remember, Greg Sankey is not going to allow a 9-game conference schedule to happen unless he gets an expanded playoff where more SEC teams could get in. And with a 12-team playoff, that could open the door for 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 SEC teams getting into the playoff. So, yes, if we do go to 9, or if we do go to a 9-game conference schedule and the playoff goes to 12 teams, that does increase the margin of error with a tougher regular season. And I always go back to this point, and it's always been true. When it comes to college football, it is more important to avoid losses than have wins, especially if you're an SEC team. Not having to play Alabama every year, let's be honest, we've only beaten them once, and it was with the greatest college football quarterback of all time. We've only beaten them once in the past decade plus. Now, some of those games are close, but still, we've only beaten them once. And if we can avoid that as many times as we possibly can, and by the way, you wouldn't be avoiding it all that much, you would still be playing Alabama every other year, guess what? That would be better for LSU. In fact, if I was an AD, I would try and push for an Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State permanent 3 teams, because then that would make it easier for you. Now, I know what a lot of you are going to say. Well, Carter, you're just trying to find a cop-out. You're trying to find an easier way for LSU to get to the playoff, and no freaking duh. That is what all teams should be doing, right? I'm not saying you're dodging other teams, because you're still going to be playing Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Alabama, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss if he's still around there, every other year. So the conference is going to be really hard anyway. In fact, way harder than any other conference in college football, even if your 3-pod team or your 3 permanent teams are Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. Let's go. So here's the thing. You could be on the total opposite end of the spectrum of me. You don't want Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. You want the games that you get the most excited about every year. And let's be honest, now that I've done LSU media stuff for quite some time now, especially over the past decade, the teams that you mostly hate just by judging an aggregate of what all of you say, It's probably Alabama and Florida. So a lot of you probably don't want a world where you are not playing Alabama and Florida each and every season. Or you don't want a world where you're not playing Auburn every season or Texas A&M. And all those programs have been stronger than Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. So maybe you are one of those people that don't want to shy away from playing an extremely difficult 3 permanent team SEC schedule, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, so comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you want Alabama off the schedule? I'll never forget that Dickerson cheap shot on Kerry Vincent. But let me know what you guys think. Obviously, we have Jay Hill coming up on the channel. That is obviously going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. That'll be 6/9 tomorrow night, 8:05 Central. So even if you're watching this way down the road, the interview's going to be great, and the link is down below, and you'll be able to watch it whenever, okay? So please be kind and respectful in the comment section. Thanks as always to our friends at the Pressy Collection. It is Power Hour LSU Band. And tonight, we're doing some chicken parm. Let's